Friday afternoon, Gold and Black Live. It's cold in here, and Kyle's trying to stay warm and stay awake. We're going to keep you awake for the next hour. At least we're going to do our best. You are here. We are here to talk Purdue sports, obviously, and our guest this afternoon will be Tony Ersland, Purdue's wrestling coach, will join us at 2:20. In fact, he's just about rolling in now. And then Jerry Palm, 2:40, will talk we're starting RPI talk. I think it may be a little bit early, but it is interesting, just kind of where the Boilermakers are. Men's basketball teams certainly are being at least looked at right now. Right now, in Jerry's. I think they have them as a 4 seed. But I want to thank our sponsor, Triple X, on the hill but on the level, Purdue tradition since 1929, John Basham. Basham Rentals, already taking rentals for 2017-18. And Hilton Garden Inn, Christy Kuntz and the folks down there, when tomorrow's a big day, stay at HGI tonight. And State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. And Kyle, we'll hit, you wear several hats here, but we're going to start with the football hat. And though Brian Newbert's not here, who really handles the majority of our recruiting, this is another big weekend though for the Boilermakers and Coach Jeff Brom in terms of not down, but they stand, at least at our count, 15 commitments. We think maybe 22, 23 by the time they're done, but who knows?
Yeah, it could be a flurry of action anytime between now and Wednesday, and maybe a little bit after Wednesday as well. Of course, Wednesday being signing day. Yeah, it's a little bit of a moving target when you try and figure out how many spots are left. I think Purdue knows a little bit better maybe than we do how many spots it has remaining, because we get asked a lot and it's sort of difficult to determine. But you can oversign too. Joe wouldn't be shocked if Purdue does that in the end. I don't know if they'll get there though by Wednesday, because it is going to take a number of commitments. But yeah, I would suspect at least a handful of guys. They've got a number of them on campus this weekend. You can read the list on our website and boiling over, and I think we're adding to that list sort of as we learn more information. But possibility of a commitment tonight from Isaac Zico, who I think Purdue really wants, a wide receiver, junior college wide receiver. Certainly that position is one that Purdue needs some immediate help. They have some help in the form of 3 freshmen, which I think each one of them is going to get an opportunity to play right away. Maybe the most noteworthy being C.J. Hayes, the one who's not yet here on campus. But Purdue would like a little bit more age at that position too. Zico deciding between Washington State and Purdue. He was out west last weekend, I believe, to make a visit. But Purdue's got to do some things too along the offensive line. Something to look for there. Maybe with the possibility of a 5th-year transfer. You don't see that real often in football, but it does happen. Russell Wilson probably being the biggest case now a number of years ago. So that's a possibility. And Purdue had a defensive line commitment for about 3 days in Dante Johnson. Then he took another visit to NC State and is now going there. So Purdue would like some more help there on that defensive line too. But it could be a pretty busy weekend, I think, for Purdue certainly, and then for those of us who are watching along as well.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting, you look at it. It's just not. This is not the low-hanging fruit. There are a couple of things that have happened. I think the count is only 5 guys, and that may be plus or minus 1 of guys that were they were on the list
right
at the end of the season, not necessarily even when Daryl Hazel was dismissed in mid-October on the 16th. And now you've really kind of rebuilt a class that's really different than what it was from Danny Hope to Daryl Hazel, because Daryl really took a lot of Danny's guys that were on that list, as I recall.
Yeah, 5 guys, I think. It's sort of difficult to determine where to put a couple of those guys.
Yes.
What category? Tyler Hamilton, I think, committed when Purdue didn't have a coach, at least not a permanent coach. He's here now. But I think that Purdue has upgraded in some areas that it seriously needed to upgrade in. And the 2 spots, before the recruiting cycle started, you probably could pick out 4. How many positions are there? But 4 of them that you really needed some help. You really needed some help at receiver, in the secondary, and along the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I think that you have upgraded signiently in the secondary. And I think,
and they could even
more. And I think they probably will even more. And if you read along closely with our site, you might know what we're talking about there. So I think they're better in the secondary. I think they've really, the secondary's been a problem for Purdue, and a seemingly unfixable one now for I don't know how long, at least 6 years it seems like, because of decommitments and players just not panning out. I think they're better at receiver right now than they were a month and a half ago. I think they still need some upgrades there, and Zico or another JC guy could help in that regard. They might get somebody if it's not Isaac Zico tonight. But the spots that I think that they just haven't done enough yet, are offensive and defensive lines, and I don't think you're going to. There's no chance you're going to fix those problems in really not even 1 year, a half
Yeah.
recruiting cycle here that Jeff Brom has been handed. It's just there's so big a deficit there that you just weren't going to do it. But on the offensive line in particular, they need older, more physically mature guys. I mean, they have a couple of freshman commitments now, but how many freshman offensive linemen play? I mean, what's the number over the last 12 years of Purdue? I think off the top of my head, I can think of two guys, right? Jordan Grimes and Dennis Kelly. I don't know if there have been any
Kelly's
others.
a walk-on, right? Is he
No, he was going to be a
he'd be
gray shirt. He
that's
wasn't
right,
going to play, but ended up
Ended up playing.
as a freshman. So they need some upgrades there, certainly.
And depth is the key there
yeah.
to being able to pull that. Again, there's always a case where the guys can come in and prove themselves. There's some guys that are on the roster currently that could come forward. I get all that. That's going to be a part of the storyline, certainly. But I think it's been interesting too, just talking and with some of the coaching staff and others around the program, and they obviously don't talk specifics before signing day, but it's not been an easy process for them. I think I think they've been kind of honest about that. The ability to go out and get guys. They're not complaining, and I think they all have kind of assimilated well into the Purdue situation. But it's a big job.
Well, a couple of things. I think you're seeing them bring in a more, at least on paper, high-quality player than what had been brought in on visits in the previous regime.
Yeah, at least based on who else is offering them. That's true.
And when you do that, you're not often going to just get those guys within 24 hours to turn around and commit to you. Now, it does happen occasionally, and it has happened with a couple of guys here over the last couple of weeks. But when you bring in people who have other visits scheduled and you have other high-quality visits scheduled. You just talk about Zico, who has been here and then visited Washington State last week. I mean, I think Washington State is a quality, Power 5 program, so he's going to go there. You're just not going to be able to bring them in. Now, maybe if you've won 40 games over the last 4 years, you can bring those type of guys in and get them to commit right away, but I think it's pretty evident Purdue has not been in that situation, and it's been a little bit more challenging. I don't know if they necessarily expected, maybe they did, to be able to bring some guys in and just convert them right away. It hasn't turned out that way. But if you get guys in the end, then, it doesn't really matter how difficult it was.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't, it's not going to be, the deficit was so big they weren't going to solve, they're not going to solve everything in one cycle.
It's going to be a class that's going to be ranked. If you get into that 14th in the Big Ten, I'm almost guaranteed it could change. They are ranked there now, at least by rivals, for what that's worth. But I do think that the interesting thing is that you've seen a desire to make inroads in the state of Indiana and start some of that process. However, a lot of that ditch digging needs to be done too between after signing day when you start offering juniors, and I would expect Jeff Brom and company to be out as far in front of that as they possibly can. We know that we know that they have in fact offered some kids locally that are underclassmen
18
too.
and 19.
Yeah, and that's important as well as you start to be able to get this program righted. But I do think it's been interesting to watch. Obviously, they're going to go after signing day 2. There'll be a big event for John Purdue Club members and et cetera for the recruiting roundup on right before the Northwestern game. So it'll be interesting to see. One of the things we've talked about receiver and that position, and maybe looking at that as a possible cover idea for our magazine. With Gregory Phillips coming back, with Terrence Landers. You don't have a lot of depth there. I mean,
you don't have a lot of proven anything.
Yeah.
I mean, Greg Phillips is a good player who I think can be better than what his results have shown over the years. It was pretty crazy last year, and that he looked really good in training camp, and then the opportunities he got on the field, he couldn't hold on to the ball, and so then he found himself out of the rotation. I think, Purdue needs him to step up a little bit more as a slot guy, as a guy that they can get the ball to. In a Cameron Posey, probably not the playmaking ability of Danny Anthrop, but in the Posey type role from this last season. So if you put him in the category of reliable, known products, even though he didn't perform as well as I think he or many others wanted him to last year, if you put him in that category, after that, I don't know what there is. Terrence Landers, has
Looks
a
the
lot.
part.
Yeah, he looks the part, has a lot of skill. You want to see him grow from a maturity point of view, I think, and take it a little bit more seriously. That's not uncommon for a guy who's, a freshman.
Yeah.
But it's, he's in a role where he needs to play a big part of Purdue's success in 2017. So he's got to step up there. I think Anthony Mohangu is another guy who has a little bit of experience. I think his ceiling isn't as high, I don't think, but he can be a contributor.
Got the body type.
Is he a starter? I don't know if he has the speed really that you want out of a guy that's going to start, but somebody who has shown to be reliable in the rotation. So really, in my opinion, you need another 1, 2, or 3 of those freshmen or a JC guy to step up. I mean, Brahm's going to use a lot of receivers. There's no doubt about that. They're going to throw the ball so much that you're going to want to be 5 or 6 deep. And right now, Purdue just can't say that it's anywhere near that.
Yeah, we don't know for sure when spring ball will start for the Boilermakers. We got to believe it's going to start the week before spring break, so sometime around the 4th, 5th, 6th of March. I'm guessing, if I know the calendar well, which I don't. And then obviously the spring game set, at least as we understand it, April the 8th in Ross-Ade Stadium, the same day as the Purdue Cancer Challenge as well. Your second hat, women's basketball, trending in a good way. The Boilermakers really impressive, at least in terms of the biggest victory since 2007. Is that right, in terms of point spread? Beating Nebraska. What the heck's happened to Nebraska? I mean,
they had a little bit of a player mutiny at the
Right.
end of last year. Connie Yori was forced to resign, I guess, or whatever. She had to leave.
Yeah.
And there's some, dispute there, obviously, between whether it was warranted or not. Obviously, there was, controversy about that. But they had their best guard then transferred. They were a senior-heavy team that got injured a lot down the stretch last year, too. So, but Natalie Romeo transferred, basically left Nebraska with one player,
Yeah.
Jessica Shepard. And while she is a really good sophomore, they just don't have anything.
Yeah.
And are 1-8 now, I think, in the Big Ten. So Purdue beat them by 44 last night. But Purdue really played well. They've been playing defense well all season, really. The offense has come along here the last couple of games when they can run a little bit, and when Ashley Morissetti hits shots, they're pretty good. The problem, as you know, for their NCAA chances is that the
Got to win some
window is narrow here because they lost really 4. If you would set up a ledger and put good wins and bad losses, they have 4 bad losses. In the good wins category, maybe you put Michigan State in there, who they've beaten twice, but the fact that Purdue's beat them twice, I think, puts the Spartans, and the fact that Susie Merchant has been out with the health concerns, has been a problem for them, but they're, really no more than an NCAA bubble team. So if Purdue is to make the NCAA tournament, it has to do something really noteworthy over the last 8 games of the Big Ten. And I put something on the site that, I feel like that is either beating Maryland next Thursday
at home,
which,
it'd be tough.
yes.
19-1 Terrapins right now is right, but
I don't know what their average margin of victory in the Big Ten is, but it's got to be 25
Yeah.
or something, I would guess. Or lose to Maryland and win the other 7 games and a couple games in the Big Ten tournament, or just win the Big Ten tournament. All 3 of those things seem pretty darn unlikely to me because Purdue's RPI is in the 80s right now, low 80s. You just got to do something to pick up some wins to negate those early losses.
Well, you got Michigan on the 8th of February at home also, that a team with a RPI.
Yeah, they're probably
close-
RPI in the 30s.
Right, they're right at where Ohio State is as well, which was surprised me a little bit, at least as of yesterday. I didn't look at it again this morning. But this is a team. The freshmen have been fun to watch. And
Last night, man, they had.
and they're getting up and down a little bit. And this is there's some hope for that. And then obviously recruiting class coming in. there's some hope.
Well,
for this
the
program's
recruiting
going.
class that you're really looking forward to is 2 years
Yeah.
from now, with Cassidy Harden and Kiana Traylor, both Indiana kids. Maybe two of the best guards, if not the two best guards in the state, and they're coming together, and sort of, I think the way that they play is a good combination. Traylor being, sort of a penetrating point guard, and Harden being a shooter, but that's a couple years away. The freshmen have played well recently for Purdue. I think last night, I put it on the site, 42 points,
Right.
15 rebounds, 10 assists, no turnovers,
Yeah.
or something between the three of them. So they've been pretty good. Purdue didn't have much depth, so they're having to play a whole lot. I think that's been sort of the benefit of some of the injuries, that those freshmen have had an accelerated growth this season, so that has helped. But Maryland's going to be tough.
Yeah.
I mean, they've played well these last two games, and you could play well against Maryland and lose by 15.
Yeah.
You need somehow the Terps to have their B minus C game and you to play your A game, and hope that that is enough to get a win.
Yeah, this is a team too. Obviously, Purdue with no inside, no true center, obviously, but an athletic group that gets up and down the court some, and that's what's going to be interesting to see if Sharon Versup's team can make a run. Now let's go to your other hat with Mark Wazakowski in baseball. It starts, and we were eager to get Mark on the show, and hopefully we will, though it may be difficult now. But he is Purdue's new baseball coach. Came from an assistant at University of Oregon. First practice today.
Right now,
and this is going to be a work in progress for him as well. And when do they open up play? Do you know? It's in a couple weeks.
It's I don't know for sure. I could look it up
Yeah.
here, but it's around the 20th, I would guess.
Well, what's
of
your
February.
early thoughts there? And I know you have to talk to Mark for the magazine upcoming, but
Yeah, talking to him and a few players next week. They got a ways to go.
Yeah.
I mean, he's taken over a program that essentially has finished in last place. I could just say where they finished. They finished in last or second to last the last 3 years ever since the championship. And, so they have a lot of issues, to say the least. I mean, they have to stay healthy, which they have not done. They have to pitch better than they have. They have not, they don't have enough depth, really. Haven't had enough depth to put a good rotation together. And I think they have some ability on offense with guys like Nick D'Alessandro and Jackson McGowan, who played a little bit as freshmen last year, should sort of be the anchors, I think, offensively. Should be a pretty decent defensive team, I would think. But, the Big Ten is part of the story is that Purdue has struggled a little bit. The Big Ten has gotten a lot better in baseball. It really
Not just
has.
IU, too. I mean,
The coach, the more teams have better coaching, I think. Recruiting has improved, and all this is probably related to the fact that facilities have greatly improved over the last 10 years, not just at Purdue, but at Indiana, which will host the Big Ten tournament this year, at Michigan State, at Northwestern, at Iowa, at Michigan, at Ohio State. I mean, just go down the list, and all those facilities are much better, so it has improved quality of play. But, Purdue's going to struggle some, but I think they're going to play a fun style of baseball. I think Wazakowski is going to bring maybe a little bit of West Coast style, and that they're going to be aggressive on the bases. They're going to want to run. Do they have the tools to do that? Maybe not, but they're going to try, I think. And, that at least will make it a little bit, more fun to watch, perhaps.
All right, speaking of someone that's going to have the Big Ten tournament at IU, that will be wrestling. And, of course, Tony Ersling is going to join us, so we have a lot more to talk to Tony about. In addition to that, is his Boilermaker team host Hammer Down Cancer Night tonight on campus, and the fact that they host Nebraska. There are no nights off in Big Ten wrestling. I don't feel sorry for Tony, because I've sensed that he's facing it head on. But boy, it's a gauntlet of difficulty for any team that's trying to get into that group. We'll talk to Tony in a couple of minutes. Take a 2-minute break, and we'll be back for more on Gold and Black Live.